Hello, class. We are presenting on the mental health data and demographics of Grand Rapids, specifically the Southeast Side, zip code 49506. So, just to give you all a brief overview of Grand Rapids, it is located in West Michigan, and it's the second biggest city in the state, behind only Detroit. With a population of nearly 200,000, it is about double the size of Ann Arbor. And if you look at the Michigan map in the corner, you can see the star that represents Grand Rapids and the M, which represents us in Ann Arbor. Grand Rapids is known in manufacturing as the furniture city, as it is the hub for the production of furniture, and 1 in 6 employed adults are working in the manufacturing furniture industry. And on the right side, you can see a map of the Grand Rapids city limits outlined with the dotted red. We decided to dig a little deeper into one particular side of Grand Rapids, the southeast side, zip code 49506. We chose this area knowing there are some disparities within the neighborhoods of this area, in particular between East Grand Rapids, which is its own small town within Grand Rapids, and the rest of the 49506 area. And for context, East Grand Rapids is known for being the affluent area. It has its own school system separate from Grand Rapids public schools and a median family income of $145,000 a year. And in contrast, the average income for the rest of 49506 is $60,000 or less. The red line on the map outlines the 49506 area, and the purple line outlines the East Grand Rapids area within the 49506. The graph on the left shows the general racial makeup of Grand Rapids as a whole, which is a majority white with a sizable Black and Latina population and a small amount of other ethnicities. Yet if we look at the graph on the right, we can see how 49506 seems to be demonstrating that they have an even higher proportion of white families. The issue with this is that a large portion of the 49506 area has a high proportion of Black families, many of whom are low income. Some tracts outside of East Grand Rapids are made up of 80% or more Black families. But in East Grand Rapids, in the same zip code, the data for the area seems to be skewed white and wealthy. Some tracts of East Grand Rapids have literally 0 Black families. And without any of that context, a person may look at the 49506 area and see the median income of $96,000 a year and conclude that the area is doing really well and is super well resourced. However, the data is skewed because of East Grand Rapids, and that brings up those numbers so high. But the majority of that wealth does stay concentrated in East Grand Rapids, as they do have their own tax system separate from Grand Rapids. And just another way of looking at this, the blue represents tracts that are majority Black families, while the yellow represents majority white families. I have heard some describe the 49506 area as de facto segregation. This essentially means that while there's no law that upholds racial segregation, the communities are largely segregated anyway.
So now we're going to look at the self-reported poor mental health. So for the poor mental health rate, 2019 to 2020, when looking at this rate, it was reported in 2019 that 13.7% of adults living in Grand Rapids self-reported 14 plus days of poor mental health in the past 30 days. And 14% of adults reported it in Kent County. And the percent of adults reporting 14 plus days of poor mental health in the whole state of Michigan was 16.2% and 13.8% for all of the US. Now my other graph here is looking at the adults in Kent County who reported the 14 plus days of poor mental health in the past 30 days. And those individuals, 30% of them are between the ages of 18 to 24. So the majority of those people, that age group, is experiencing poor mental health. And then 13% are between ages of 25 to 34, and 15% are between the ages of 35 to 44. And as we can see, 12% are between the ages of 55 to 64, and a very small amount of those individuals are 65 years and older, as it's showing 5%, only 5% of the individuals are 65 and older. Young adults, age group 18 to 24, are actually 6 times more likely to report the 14 plus days or more of poor mental health days than older adults. For Kent County, it's about 1 in 7 adults who reported 14 or more days of poor mental health in the past 30 days. And it's reported that 40% of these adults are actually not accessing any form of treatment. Using the data on the ArcGIS website, I was actually able to create this line graph displaying the poor mental health trend between 2014 to 2017 in specific Grand Rapids neighborhoods with the postal code of 49506. Through the poor mental health rate percentage, this graph conveys the amount of people in the specific neighborhoods who self-reported 14 plus poor or more mental health days in the past 30 days for both the years 2014 and 2017. For those neighborhoods, we were able to get the amount of people who self-reported that for those areas. So from this line graph, we're able to see the poor mental health rate got worse for the neighborhood East Town here with the light blue line. More people were reporting poor mental health, so the line went up, which means it got worse. And it went from 9.20% in 2014 to 15.4% of people reporting poor mental health in 2017. So the greater amount of people in that area that had poor mental health in 2017 than 2014. There's no data actually for East Grand Rapids, but for Eastgate, you can see there wasn't really a change for that line, the dark blue. The poor mental health rate was 12.4% in 2014, and then it went to 11.4% in 2017. So there wasn't very much of a change. Just for Ottawa Hills, the purple line here, that's 5.1%. So the rate went from 18% for the poor mental health rate into 2017. It went down to 12.9% of people self-reporting the poor mental health.
One important thing to know about 49506 is the number of mental health providers and outpatient services that exist in the area. So we see a general increase in this number. So in 2012, there were 41 mental health providers per 100,000 residents for Kent County, Michigan. This is relevant because it was hard to find statistics for just the zip code, but the statistics for the county were readily available. So we see an increase in 2014, when there was 179 mental health providers per 100,000 residents. This increases in 2016 and to 2020 when there was 348.13, to be exact, mental health providers per 100,000 residents in Kent County. So on this next slide, we see the number of residential and outpatient treatment facilities. This is important because if people need more intensive treatment and need like a residential facility or just in a more intensive outpatient facility, having access to these facilities is really important. So for 49506, there were 3 total facilities found on psychologytoday.com. All 3 of them were intensive outpatient programs. And then I broke it down by specialization. So 1 facility specialized in drug rehab, 1 facility specialized in eating disorders, And all three of them offered online services as well, which is important because it could offer more accessibility to people who maybe can't, who want to access the service but can't come to the actual facility.
My first graphic here, it represents the patient to mental health provider ratio, which helps us see the change in patient to mental health provider ratio for Kent County as well as neighboring counties. So for instance, in 2014, Kent County looks to have about a 550 to 1 ratio, give or take, while in 2021, they have about a 272 to 1 ratio, meaning that for every 272 patients, there is one mental health provider. All neighboring counties have higher ratios, including Allegiant County in 2021, that is roughly has a ratio of around 1,100 to 1. Of those providers, it's important to consider if they're actually taking new patients, accepting their insurance, and are a right fit for the client. Additionally, I did some research and I called the first 10 therapists listed on Psychology Today who accept Medicaid insurance. I found some negatives and positives based on my results. So first, I found that 4 who indicated that they were not accepting new patients on the website, including another one who I had called and said that they were not accepting new clients. So that was pretty interesting. Additionally, they were pretty unresponsive when I called the other 6. So only one got back within 48 hours, and they were the one that said they were not accepting new clients, and I still have not heard back from the others. Additionally, there's a lack in diversity. I was able to find that 8 indicated they were women on the website, 0 were men or non-binary, and 2 did not indicate gender. However, I did find that 8 indicated that they have an online session option, and this can help with accessibility, assuming the client has access to a device. If not, this actually limits their ability to receive services even more. And then also I found that 4 offered a sliding scale, which can offer more flexibility, but could also limit options because the other 6 did not indicate if they had a sliding scale. Looking at these graphics, the one on the left represents that 1 in 5 residents in Kent County are utilizing some form of Medicaid. And then the one on the right breaks it down a little further. We can see what percentage of people on Medicaid and the Healthy Michigan plan are on which insurances specifically. So for instance, we can see 48.5% of people utilize Priority Health and 4.9% utilize McLaren. And this is important to note because a lot of therapists may not accept these insurances, which can limit options for therapy. And additionally, here in this graphic, we can see the number of people in Kent County who are utilizing Medicaid and or the Healthy Michigan plan between the years 2016 and 2022. And we can see that that was pretty steady between 2016 and 2019, and then we see a pretty drastic jump following 2019.
The data surrounding mental health providers brings up the question of the accessibility of these services. Part of that access includes transportation to these services. Using Social Explorer, I wanted to gauge how people in Grand Rapids and in the 49506 zip code were getting around. Graphs show how residents 16 and up are getting to work. So you can see in both areas, residents are predominantly using their car. Next, they're walking, busing, and then biking. And you can see these proportions are pretty similar when you compare the population size of the area. But we do see some differences in busing. So we can see that more people proportionally are using the bus to get to work in Grand Rapids. And then in the 49506 zip code, proportionally less people are using the bus. Well, if we look at the Grand Rapids public transit system, we have a map here in front of us of Grand Rapids. We can see there's a highlighted area here in this blue kind of gray highlight, and that represents the 49506 zip code. And we see that the bus lines do run through it, but are very limited in the East Grand Rapids area, kind of isolating that area from any public transit. We see that zoomed in portion of 49506, and then I drew in the existent bus lines as well. And the orange dots represent the locations of mental health professionals within that area. And as you can see, a lot of them do match up with those bus lines and would make it pretty accessible by bus, but we can also see that there are a few outliers, and we can see again that big gap in the East Grand Rapids area. So surprisingly, we did find that bus routes are available, but clearly they are limited in some ways as compared to the greater Grand Rapids area, which is very connected by buses.
In terms of parks and recreation areas, this is a community strength. As you can see from the map, there are many parks and recreation areas within the zip code of 49506. These images are taken from one specific park, John Collins Park, which is really beautiful. It's on this little body of water. You can see the flowers are in bloom in the one picture, and it's just a really nice area for people to be able to spend time and hang out. So on this next slide, we have a few more community strengths. I tried to break it into some kind of fast facts that I thought were really good strengths of the community. So the first one we have is the increase in the median home value. So as we've discussed a little bit about this particular zip code, there is some de facto segregation happening. And so while it's good that home values are increasing, as people who bought, years ago may have seen an increase in their familial wealth and stuff like that, it can also be a sign of gentrification. So it is important to keep that in mind as well. When we do see a significant increase in the median home value from 2014 to 2020, it is important to keep in mind that that may in fact be a sign of an issue, but it also could be a sign of a strength of the area becoming, quote, more desirable as the house values go up. So that is important. Also, school engagement is very good. There is a low dropout rate for those aged 16 to 19, which is very good for the youth of the area. There's a high percentage of people who have access to the internet, which is good for connectivity, for access to jobs, for access to loved ones, for access to telehealth, all that kind of thing. And there's also a low percentage of physically inactive persons over the age of 20, which is good for the overall health of the community.
So, what does the data tell us? Well, first of all, it tells us there's a lack of mental health professionals accepting patients currently. While interestingly, there is an increase in the total number of mental health providers for the county overall. And we also saw the limited number of treatment facilities, like inpatient and residential facilities outside of outpatient. We also noticed that there was an increase in Medicaid enrollees. We can also see that the community itself, 49506, has many community strengths that could benefit mental health. And then we also noticed that public transit is available, but limited in some areas.
And then our last slide details some intervention suggestions. So basically what we thought we would kind of focus on was Medicaid accessibility. So for instance, we thought it would be a good idea to have trained advocates available to assist people one-on-one with applying to Medicaid. The process can be very confusing, and having someone trained in the process would be really helpful to help people access benefits more readily. Also offering incentives for clinics to accept patients who have Medicaid. We saw this was an issue where people weren't accepting all insurances, and so offering a better incentive would be really helpful. And then also incentives for telehealth and offering spots that have technology and space available. We came up with the example of maybe like a small room in a library